Long before humans named the stars, long before rivers had words, the world was already old. Mountains had risen and crumbled, oceans had flooded and retreated. The planet breathed slowly over millions of years without any witness to remember it. Life crawled, swam, and grew, but nothing yet wondered why it existed. And then, at some forgotten point in time, something changed. The ancient Sumerians, writing in clay thousands of years ago, believed that before humanity walked the land, there was another order of beings. They called them the Anunnaki. The word itself meant something like those who came from heaven to earth. To the people of Mesopotamia, these were not distant, abstract gods. They were powerful, willful, emotional, and deeply involved in the fate of the world. They quarreled, they made mistakes, they grew tired, and most importantly, they needed something from the earth. They needed workers. The Sumerians told of a time when the Anunnaki themselves were burdened with the labor of maintaining the world, digging canals, raising embankments, managing the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates. The gods were immortal, but they were not tireless. Over long ages they grew weary of their own creation, and so, according to the oldest stories ever written, the Anunnaki made a decision that would change the fate of the earth forever. They would create a new being, not a god. Not an animal, but something in between, a being that could work, a being that could think, a being that could obey. They would create humanity. In the Sumerian creation epic, a god named Enki, the lord of wisdom and deep waters, proposed a radical idea. From the clay of the earth, mixed with the essence of a god, a new creature could be formed, one that carried within it both divine spark and earthly flesh. This mixture of two worlds is where the modern idea of DNA enters the story. To the Sumerians, they did not speak of genes or chromosomes. They spoke of blood, essence, and breath. But in their mythology, something from the Anunnaki themselves was combined with the raw material of the earth to make humans what they were. In other words, humanity was not simply molded from dirt. Humanity was altered. Humanity was engineered. In the old texts, one of the Anunnaki was sacrificed. His blood was mixed with clay. From this sacred mixture, the first humans were formed. They were designed to carry something of the gods within them, not just in spirit, but in substance. This is where the ancient story becomes strangely familiar to modern ears, because today we would say that what makes us who we are is not our blood, but our DNA, the invisible code that determines how we grow, how we think, how we survive, the blueprint of life. And in the Anunnaki story, that blueprint did not belong to Earth alone. It was borrowed, or perhaps it was taken. The humans that emerged from this divine mixture were intelligent. They could understand commands. They could shape the land. They could multiply. They could do what the gods no longer wished to do. But they were also limited. They aged. They forgot. They feared. They died. This was no accident. The Anunnaki did not want equals. They wanted servants. And yet, something about humanity did not remain fully under control. Because when you mix something divine with something earthly, you do not get a perfect tool. You get a being that can dream. As generations passed, humans became more than laborers. They began to build cities. They began to worship. They began to wonder. They told stories of where they came from. They remembered dimly that their creators were not distant forces of nature, but beings who once walked among them. The Anunnaki were said to descend from the heavens, to sit on thrones, to pass judgment, to fall in love, to grow jealous, and to rage when humans disobeyed. In these stories, the gods were not eternal ideals. They were personalities. Some loved humanity, some despised them, some saw them as useful, some saw them as dangerous. And it was Enki, the same god who helped create humans, who often stood between humanity and destruction. There came a time, the stories say, when humans had multiplied too much. Their cities grew loud. Their activity disturbed the Anunnaki. The earth was no longer quiet. The gods grew restless, and so they decided to erase their own creation. This is where the Great Flood enters the ancient record. Long before Noah, long before the Bible, the Sumerians told of a divine decision to wipe the slate clean. Humanity had become a problem, but Enki once again intervened. He warned a human. He told him to build a vessel. He saved the genetic seed of humanity from extinction. And after the waters receded, humans walked the earth again, carrying within them the same ancient mixture of God and clay, the same borrowed essence, the same strange inheritance. Over thousands of years, these stories were retold, reshaped, and absorbed into later cultures. The Anunnaki became the gods of Babylon. Then echoes of them appeared in Hebrew scripture. Then they faded into myth. But in the 20th century, something strange happened. People began to look at these ancient tablets with modern eyes, and they asked a question no Sumerian ever would have asked. What if this wasn't just a story? What if the essence of the gods was something literal? What if what they called blood we would call DNA? This idea, popularized by modern writers, transformed the Anunnaki from mythological gods into something else entirely. Ancient visitors. Beings not from the heavens of religion, but from the heavens of space. In this interpretation, the Anunnaki were no longer symbols of nature or divine order. They were advanced entities who came to Earth long ago, searching for something, resources, labor, or perhaps compatibility. In this version of the story, humans were not spiritually created. They were genetically modified, primitive hominids altered by an outside intelligence, spliced with something not of this world, not just taught, changed. The idea is unsettling not because it is proven, but because it feels strangely plausible in a modern age of gene editing and artificial intelligence. We now live in a world where we ourselves can alter DNA, create new life forms, and shape evolution. So when we look back at ancient myths through this lens, we see reflections of our own future, or perhaps memories of a forgotten past. But whether the Anunnaki were gods of myth or visitors of flesh and blood, the question remains the same. Why would they need human DNA? What could be found inside a fragile, mortal creature that an immortal being lacked? Perhaps it was not strength, perhaps it was not intelligence, perhaps it was something far more subtle, the ability to adapt, the ability to survive, the ability to change. The gods of the ancient world were eternal, but they were also static. Humanity, born from both heaven and earth, was something new, something unpredictable, something alive. And so, in the quiet space between myth and memory, the story continues. Because even now, thousands of years later, we are still asking the same question: who made us and why? In the long silence after the flood, when the waters withdrew and the land slowly breathed again, humanity began its second awakening. The ancient stories tell us that the survivors stepped onto a world that felt both new and strangely familiar. The rivers still flowed. The mountains still watched. But something in the air had changed. It was as if the earth itself remembered what had been lost. Humans carried within them the memory of the Anunnaki, not as clear images, but as an inherited feeling. A distant sense that they had once been guided, shaped, and watched. They began to rebuild. Villages rose along the rivers. Crops were planted in soil that had been washed clean. Families grew, generations passed, and as humanity multiplied, the Anunnaki did not vanish from the world. They simply became more distant. The Sumerians believed that the gods retreated to the heavens, but their influence remained. Kings claimed divine blood, priests spoke with godly authority. Temples were raised to honor those who had once ruled directly. In this way, the legacy of the Anunnaki was woven into every part of human civilization. But beneath the rituals and prayers, a deeper mystery lingered. If humans had been created to serve, why were they given minds that could question? If they were tools, why were they capable of art, love, and rebellion? The old tablets speak of something that went wrong in the creation process. The gods did not intend for humans to become fully self-aware. Yet when divine essence was mixed with earthly matter, something unexpected emerged: consciousness. Not just awareness, but the ability to reflect on one's own existence, to wonder, to doubt, to imagine. This gift was both humanity's greatest strength and its greatest threat. Because a being that can think is a being that can resist. Some of the Anunnaki, according to the myths, came to regret the decision to give humans too much of themselves. They saw humanity growing not just in number but in complexity. Cultures formed, laws were written, stories were told, and with every story humans shaped their own understanding of reality. They no longer saw themselves only as servants of the gods. They began to see themselves as something more. In some traditions, the Anunnaki attempted to correct this. They sent kings to rule. They demanded worship. They enforced order. They reminded humanity of its place, but the seed had already been planted. Humanity had inherited not just the physical traits of the gods, but something of their will. And will is a dangerous thing. In modern retellings of the Anunnaki story, this is where the idea of DNA becomes especially powerful. Because DNA is not just a set of instructions for building a body. It is a memory of the past. Every living being carries within it the record of countless generations. Changes, adaptations, and survival strategies are written into the code itself. DNA is history compressed into a microscopic form. If the Anunnaki truly altered early humans, they may not have been trying to create obedient workers. They may have been trying to create something that could survive where they could not. The Earth is unpredictable. Climate shifts, disasters strike, life evolves in chaotic ways. Immortal beings fixed in their form might struggle to adapt to such a world, but a species built on variation and reproduction can endure. Humanity changes from generation to generation. Skin tones shift, immune systems evolve, minds become more complex. We are not static, we are designed to adapt. If the Anunnaki were seeking a way to preserve themselves or their legacy, what better vessel than a species capable of endless transformation? In this interpretation, human DNA is not just a tool. It is an archive, a living library of survival. Perhaps the Anunnaki saw in humanity a way to continue, not as gods on thrones, but as something woven into the fabric of life itself. Not rulers, but ancestors. This idea echoes through many ancient myths, gods who interbreed with humans. Heroes born of divine and mortal blood, royal families claiming descent from the heavens. These stories may be symbolic, or they may be memories distorted by time. Because if the Anunnaki did mix their essence with humanity, then their legacy did not end when they left. It lives on in us. Every cell in our bodies carries the same ancient code, and that code, whether born of myth or manipulation, is what makes us human. There is another layer to this story that is rarely spoken of: fear. The Anunnaki in the ancient texts were not all powerful. They argued, they worried, they made mistakes. They feared losing control of the world they had shaped, and fear is often what drives creation. What if humanity was not created out of love or curiosity, but out of desperation? What if the Anunnaki were facing a crisis of their own? Perhaps their world was dying. Perhaps their bodies could not survive Earth's environment. Perhaps they needed a biological bridge. A species that could exist here where they could not. Human DNA in this light becomes something like a key. A way to interface with a planet that was never truly theirs. In modern science, we speak of compatibility, of environments and organisms, of how life must be suited to the world it inhabits. If the Anunnaki were not native to Earth, they may have found it hostile, too bright, too heavy, too unstable, so they turned to biology. They created a species that could thrive here. And then they blended themselves into it, not fully, just enough. This would explain why humans are both fragile and resilient, why we are prone to disease yet capable of surviving almost anywhere on the planet, why we can adapt to deserts, jungles, mountains, and ice. We are a hybrid species, born of Earth, touched by something else. Whether that something was divine or extraterrestrial is less important than what it represents. A bridge between worlds, and bridges are always meant to be crossed. As centuries turned into millennia, the Anunnaki faded from direct involvement. Their stories became myths, their names became echoes, but their influence never truly disappeared. Humanity continued to evolve. We built tools, we built languages, we built empires, and in doing so we became something the Anunnaki may never have expected. Independent, no longer servants, no longer children, but creators in our own right. We began to alter the world just as the Anunnaki once did. We reshaped rivers, we changed landscapes, we bent nature to our will. And now in the modern age we have begun to do something even more remarkable. We have started to alter our own DNA. For the first time in history, humanity is doing what the Anunnaki were said to have done to us. We are editing the code of life. We are deciding what traits to keep and what to remove. We are stepping into the role of creators, and this is where the ancient story becomes a mirror. Because if we are the result of someone else's experiment, then we are now repeating it. We create artificial intelligence. We design synthetic organisms. We look outward into the stars, searching for other minds. Perhaps we are not just descendants of the Anunnaki. Perhaps we are becoming them. And so the quiet question returns. Why was humanity made the way it was? Why do we think, feel, and dream the way we do? Why do we long for something beyond ourselves? Maybe the answer is hidden deep within us, in the same ancient code that once mixed heaven and earth, in the same invisible blueprint that continues to guide every cell, every breath, every life. And as we move forward into a future filled with our own creations, we may one day discover that the story of the Anunnaki was never really about gods, it was about us. And what happens when a species realizes that it was never meant to remain small? The story is far from over. As humanity stepped deeper into its own future, the shadow of its origins followed quietly behind. Even when the Anunnaki faded into legend, their presence lingered in the structure of the world humans built. Every temple raised toward the sky, every pyramid aligned with the stars, every myth about beings who descended from above carried the same distant memory. We came from something greater, and we were changed by it. In ancient Mesopotamia, the descendants of the first cities continued to record their histories in clay. They wrote of kings who ruled with the blessing of the gods. They wrote of divine law and cosmic order. But beneath these formal records, fragments of something older still remained. Stories of a time when the gods were not invisible. A time when they walked among humans, a time when their blood was still fresh in the veins of the first people. These stories were not told as metaphor. They were told as memory. Even today, when archaeologists translate these tablets, they are struck by how physical the Anunnaki seem. They are not distant spirits. They eat, they drink, they argue, they fall in love, they punish, they forgive. They behave like beings who exist in the world. This has led many modern thinkers to wonder whether the myths are distorted recollections of real encounters. Not with gods in the religious sense, but with entities whose technology and knowledge were so far beyond early humans that they were understood as divine. To a Stone Age mind, a being who could manipulate life itself would seem like a god. To a Bronze Age scribe, a being who came from the sky would be a god. To us, they might be something else. But the story always begins the same way, with creation. In both the ancient and modern versions of the Anunnaki narrative, humanity is not a natural accident. It is a designed species, a fusion of what Earth offered and what the creators needed. The question that echoes through every retelling is simple. What did they need us for? Some say labor, some say worship, some say companionship, but there is another possibility, quieter and more unsettling. What if the Anunnaki needed us to remember? Memory is one of humanity's greatest powers. We do not just live in the present, we carry the past with us, we record it, we pass it on. We preserve it long after the original witnesses are gone. Civilizations fall, but stories survive. If the Anunnaki were mortal or if their civilization was fragile, then creating a species capable of memory would be a way to ensure that something of them would endure. Not in stone, not in machines, but in minds. Perhaps the true inheritance they left us was not genetic, but narrative. A story that would be told again and again, reshaped by every generation, but never entirely forgotten. This is why the Anunnaki appear not just in Sumerian myth, but in echoes across cultures. Sky gods, creators who mold humans from earth, divine bloodlines, floods sent by angry gods, chosen survivors. These themes appear in the stories of Egypt, of the Levant, of India, of the Americas. It is as if humanity is remembering something in pieces, and those pieces all point to the same ancient event. A moment when something from beyond the earth changed the course of life here. In modern times, when we look at our own DNA, we find something equally strange. We are not just another animal. Our brains are unusually large for our bodies. Our capacity for language is unique. Our ability to imagine worlds that do not exist sets us apart from every other species. Evolution explains some of this, but not all of it. There are gaps, mysteries, sudden leaps in capability that do not fit neatly into the slow, steady pace of natural selection. To those who believe in the Anunnaki hypothesis, these gaps are not mistakes. They are fingerprints, traces of something added, of something edited, like a line of code inserted into a program, changing what it can do. And if that is true, then human DNA is not just biological, it is technological, a system designed to produce a certain kind of being, a being that can learn, create, and transform the world. Why would the Anunnaki want that? Perhaps because they could not, or not anymore. Many of the old stories, the gods grow weary. They grow tired of their own existence. They become trapped by their immortality, repeating the same cycles endlessly. Humans, by contrast, are brief and intense. We live fast, feel deeply, and change constantly. We are unpredictable, alive. If the Anunnaki were ancient and unchanging, they may have seen in humanity something they had lost, the ability to evolve, the ability to begin again. In this sense, human DNA would not be a tool of control. It would be a gift, a way to carry forward what the Anunnaki could no longer be. This idea transforms the story from one of exploitation to one of quiet legacy. The gods did not create humans to serve, they created them to continue, and when they left, they did not abandon their creation. They left it with everything it needed to become more than they ever were. Over thousands of years, humanity has done exactly that. We have spread across the planet. We have unlocked the secrets of atoms and stars. We have created art, music, and meaning. We have asked the same questions the Anunnaki once asked. Who are we? Why are we here? What comes next? And now, as we stand on the edge of our own genetic and technological power, we are facing the same choice they once did. Do we create? Do we alter? Do we shape the future of life itself? Perhaps the story of the Anunnaki was never meant to be taken literally or dismissed entirely. Perhaps it is a mirror, a way of preparing humanity for the moment when we would become the gods of our own world. The quiet truth hidden beneath the ancient myth is this: we were made to change, we were made to question, we were made to reach beyond what we are. And whether that impulse came from earth, from heaven, or from somewhere far beyond the stars, it now belongs to us. The blood of the Anunnaki, real or symbolic, flows through every human story. And as long as we continue to wonder where we came from, the story will never truly end. It will simply wait patiently for the next generation to tell it again. As the centuries drifted forward, humanity continued to build its world upon the quiet foundation of ancient memory. Cities rose and fell, empires bloomed and vanished like morning mist. Yet beneath every new beginning, the same old questions stirred. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Who made us? The Anunnaki, whether remembered as gods, ancestors, or visitors from the stars, remained woven into the deep fabric of these questions. Even when their names changed, their presence did not. They became the gods of Babylon, the watchers of Enoch, the shining ones of countless traditions. Always there were beings who came from above. Always there was a time before humans were as they are now. And always there was a moment when something intervened. In the quiet spaces between myths, something even more revealing emerges. Fear. Humanity has always feared abandonment, the fear that the creators will leave, the fear that the heavens will go silent, the fear that we are alone in a vast and indifferent universe. The Anunnaki stories speak directly to this fear. They describe beings who came, shaped the world, and then withdrew. They left humanity to walk on its own, and perhaps that is the most human part of the story. Every child eventually realizes that their parents are not gods, that the ones who gave them life cannot protect them forever, that they must grow up and face the world alone. Humanity's relationship with the Anunnaki mirrors this ancient emotional truth. We were created, we were guided, and then we were left, but something remains behind when creators leave. Responsibility. If the Anunnaki truly altered human DNA, then they did not just give us bodies and minds. They gave us the burden of choice. A being without free will is not responsible for what it becomes. A being with free will is, and humanity, perhaps more than any other species, is defined by that burden. We are not simply what nature made us, we are what we choose to become. This is why the idea of genetic inheritance from the Anunnaki resonates so deeply. It offers an explanation for our contradictions. We are capable of compassion and cruelty, of wisdom and destruction, of creation and annihilation. We are both divine and animal, both builders and ruiners, and that duality feels ancient, as if it were designed into us. In the modern world, as science peels back the layers of our DNA, we find that much of what we are is written in a language older than memory. We share code with every living thing. We are part of a vast biological family, and yet there is something about us that stands apart. Our minds, our stories, our longing for meaning. If the Anunnaki gave us anything, it may have been this longing, a spark that keeps us searching for something beyond ourselves. Perhaps they were searching too. Perhaps the Anunnaki themselves were once created by something greater. Perhaps the chain of creation stretches endlessly backward from one world to the next, each passing on a fragment of itself. In this way, human DNA becomes part of a cosmic lineage, not just of Earth, but of existence. We are the carriers of something ancient. Something that began long before our planet formed. Something that has been shaped, reshaped, and passed down through countless forms. Whether we call it divine essence, genetic code, or consciousness itself, it continues to move through us. And so the story of the Anunnaki is not really about the past, it is about what we are becoming. As we learn to manipulate DNA, to create artificial life, to design intelligence, we are stepping into the role of creators. We are doing to future beings what the Anunnaki may have done to us. We will decide what they are, what they can do, what they will become, and someday perhaps they will ask the same questions we do. Who made us? Why? And did our creators need something from us? The quiet irony is that we may already know the answer, because we need something from our creations. We need them to outlive us. We need them to carry our memory. We need them to continue what we cannot. This is what parents need from children, what civilizations need from history, what gods may need from mortals. So whether the Anunnaki were myth, metaphor, or memory, their story remains alive in us. We are their continuation, their echo, their experiment. And as we move forward into a future filled with our own creations, we may finally understand what it means to be both the made and the maker. The ancient story, whispered beside forgotten fires, still breathes quietly in every human heart. And it will continue to be told, as long as there are beings who wonder where they came from. Time moves in gentle waves and humanity drifts upon it, carried forward by forces it rarely sees. Long after the last tablets of Sumer were pressed into clay, long after the temples of the Anunnaki had crumbled into dust, their story continued in subtler forms. It lived in the shape of our questions. It lived in the way we looked up at the sky and felt that something was missing. It lived in the quiet sense that we were not meant to be alone. Across cultures and centuries, people spoke of watchers in the heavens, of beings who once taught humanity how to farm, how to build, how to write. The names changed, but the roles remained the same: teachers, guardians, creators, and always just beyond reach. If the Anunnaki truly altered the course of human DNA, then their influence would not end with their departure. It would continue to unfold slowly, generation by generation, as the hidden code within us expressed itself in new ways. Perhaps this is why human history feels so accelerated. For most of Earth's existence, life changed slowly. Species adapted over millions of years, but in the blink of an eye, humanity transformed the planet. We went from stone tools to space travel in a few thousand years. That kind of leap is unprecedented. It is as if something inside us was waiting to awaken. Waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right conditions. The Anunnaki stories speak of a time when the gods withdrew, but not entirely. They left behind kings with divine blood. They left behind knowledge. They left behind symbols that would guide humanity forward. And perhaps they left behind a program, not a machine, but a biological one. A sequence within human DNA that would slowly unlock our potential as we reached certain thresholds: language, agriculture, writing, science, technology. Each step building upon the last, each one drawing us closer to something we were always meant to become. This idea may sound fantastical, but it echoes through our own understanding of biology. We know that genes can remain dormant for generations before expressing themselves. We know that evolution is not always a smooth curve, but sometimes a sudden leap. Human consciousness itself may be one such leap. A switch flipped long ago, a door opened. And what walked through was not just intelligence, but awareness. The awareness of being, the awareness of time, the awareness of death. And with it came a deep and aching desire to understand where we came from. Why do humans create gods? Why do we tell stories of creators? Why do we imagine beings who shaped us and then disappeared? Perhaps because somewhere deep within us we remember, not with our minds but with our bones. Memory does not only live in the brain, it lives in the body. In instinct, in fear, in longing. The Anunnaki may be long gone, but their echo remains. It whispers every time we gaze at the stars. It stirs every time we dream of other worlds. It surfaces every time we wonder if we are alone. If the Anunnaki were once physical beings who walked this earth, then they may have faced the same limitations we do. Their technology may have been advanced, but their bodies may have been fragile. Their world may have been dying. Their species may have been fading. In humanity, they may have seen a way forward, not as rulers, not as masters, but as ancestors. By blending their essence with Earth's life, they ensured that something of them would continue. Not in stone monuments, not in forgotten ruins, but in living beings in us. This perspective transforms the ancient story into something deeply intimate. We are not the children of distant gods. We are the continuation of a lost civilization, a living archive of an ancient lineage. And every human birth is, in a way, a quiet rebirth of something far older than Earth itself. But what of the Anunnaki themselves? Did they leave? Did they die? Did they become something else? The myths are unclear. Some say they returned to the heavens. Some say they retreated to hidden realms. Some say they became the spirits that watch over humanity. Perhaps the truth is simpler. Perhaps they became us, not fully, not in a single moment, but gradually. Through countless generations of mixing, adaptation, and evolution, the line between creator and creation may have blurred. If human DNA contains fragments of something not originally of Earth, then those fragments have now been shaped by millions of years of life here. We are no longer what the Anunnaki were, but we are not only what Earth made us either. We are something new, something in between. And that is why the question of why the Anunnaki needed human DNA is so powerful. It is really the question of why life seeks to continue, why it adapts, why it transforms itself to survive. Perhaps the Anunnaki, facing their own end, did what all living beings do when confronted with extinction. They found a way to carry on, not as they were, but as something else, and in doing so they created humanity. The quiet tragedy of this story is that the creators never get to see what their creation becomes. The Anunnaki, if they existed, would not recognize the modern world. They would not recognize cities of glass and steel. They would not recognize machines that think. They would not recognize humans who can peer into the very code of life, but they might recognize the impulse behind it all, the same impulse that led them to create us, the desire to go beyond limits, to overcome death, to leave something behind. And so, whether the Anunnaki were gods, aliens, or symbols of our own forgotten past, their story continues through us. We are the answer to their question. We are the reason they needed human DNA. And as we move into a future where we will shape life itself, we are beginning to understand what it means to be on both sides of creation. The story grows quieter here, but it does not end. It waits, in the code of every cell, in the dream of every mind, in the endless human longing to know where we came from and where we are going. There is a gentle stillness that follows every great creation, a pause in which the universe seems to listen to what it has just made. Humanity, born from the meeting of Earth and something beyond, has always lived within that stillness. We are creatures of motion and noise, yet beneath it all there is a quiet awareness that we are part of something far older and far wider than ourselves. The Anunnaki story, whether understood as myth or memory, speaks to this awareness. It tells of a time when beings from beyond the ordinary world stepped into the flow of life on Earth and altered it forever. They did not simply leave a mark on stone or soil. They left it in flesh, in blood, in the invisible code that shapes every living thing. This is why the idea of human DNA being touched by something beyond Earth continues to feel strangely resonant. DNA is not just biology, it is history. It is the record of where life has been and the map of where it might go. It is a story written in a language older than words, and in that story humanity occupies a curious place. We are young, yet we carry ancient memories. We are fragile, yet we endure. We are small, yet we imagine the infinite. These contradictions suggest a being that was not meant to be simple. Perhaps the Anunnaki needed such a being. In the ancient tablets, the gods were powerful, but they were also bound by their own nature. They could not change easily. They could not evolve the way humans do. Their immortality was also their prison. To live forever is to remain the same forever. Humans, by contrast, are creatures of change. Every generation is different from the last. Every child is a new variation, a new possibility. We are built for transformation. If the Anunnaki were seeking a way to escape the limits of their own existence, they may have turned to the only thing that could truly offer that escape: evolution. By weaving themselves into a species that evolves, they ensured that something of them would always move forward, not as a fixed form but as a living process. In this sense, human DNA becomes a vessel, not a container for control, but a river of becoming. This idea aligns quietly with what science tells us. DNA does not just preserve traits, it experiments, it mutates, it tries new combinations. Most fail, but some succeed, and those successes shape the future. Humanity may be one such success, a successful fusion of Earth and something beyond, and if that is true, then we are not the end of the Anunnaki story. We are its continuation, but continuation is never simple. It brings responsibility. As humanity has grown more powerful, we have also grown more dangerous. We have the ability to heal and to destroy on a planetary scale. We can create life in laboratories and erase it with weapons. We can alter the climate of the world we inhabit. We are becoming, in our own way, gods, and like the Anunnaki of the old stories, we now face the same moral questions. What should we create? What should we alter? What should we leave alone? The ancient myths warn us of the cost of careless creation. The Anunnaki made humanity for a purpose, but they did not fully understand what they were unleashing. Their creation grew beyond their control. It began to think, to question, to choose. And that is always the risk of creating something that shares your own essence. It may become your equal, or your successor, or your undoing. In our modern age, as we design artificial intelligence and genetically modified organisms, we are standing at the same threshold. We are deciding what will come after us. Will our creations be tools, or will they, like us, become something more? The Anunnaki story is not a warning against creation. It is a reminder of its gravity. To create is to release something into the world that you cannot fully control. To give it a piece of yourself is to bind your fate to its own. Perhaps the Anunnaki understood this. Perhaps that is why they eventually stepped back. They may have realized that humanity needed space to become what it was meant to be, not servants, not copies, but something new. The quiet beauty of the story is that it does not end with domination or destruction. It ends with inheritance. We carry the past within us. Not as chains, but as roots, and from those roots we grow. Every time a human child is born, the ancient experiment continues. The code is copied, mixed, and passed on. The story moves forward, and as long as we are here, the Anunnaki, whether real or imagined, are not truly gone. They live in our curiosity, in our creativity, in our relentless drive to reach beyond what we are. We are the living answer to their need. And as we look toward a future filled with our own creations, we may finally understand what it means to be both the children of gods and the gods of our own children. The story, soft and ancient, still flows quietly through us, and it will keep flowing, as long as life continues to ask why. The universe is vast and patient, and within its slow unfolding, every story is given time to breathe. Humanity's story, shaped by ancient whispers and modern dreams, continues to move forward with a quiet inevitability. Whether the Anunnaki were gods, visitors, or symbols, their presence lingers in the way we see ourselves. We are not content to simply exist. We want to know. We want to understand. We want to reach beyond the horizon of what we have been given. This longing may be the most precious inheritance of all. In the old myths, the Anunnaki were often described as beings of great knowledge. They knew the secrets of the earth and the sky. They understood the forces that shaped life, and yet even they did not know everything. They struggled with their own limitations, their own conflicts, their own fears. This makes them feel strangely human. Perhaps that is because they were never meant to be gods in the absolute sense. They were simply further along the path. A civilization that had already passed through the stage humanity is now entering. If that is true, then the Anunnaki did not come to Earth as masters. They came as survivors, survivors of a long and difficult journey seeking a way to continue. In humanity, they may have found a mirror of their own beginnings, a young species full of potential standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. By blending their essence with ours, they created a bridge between what they had been and what they hoped to become. And then they let go. This is one of the hardest things any creator can do, to step back and allow the creation to find its own way, to accept that it will make mistakes, that it will suffer, that it will change in ways you cannot predict. The Anunnaki myths suggest that this letting go was not easy. The gods argued. Some wanted to control humanity more tightly. Some wanted to wipe it out when it became too loud, too unruly, too independent. But others, like Enki, saw something else. They saw possibility. They saw a future that did not belong to the gods but to their creation. This tension between control and freedom is at the heart of every story of creation. It is the tension between what is and what could be, and it is a tension we now live with ourselves. As we gain the power to shape life, to design intelligence, to rewrite the code of nature, we are faced with the same choice. Do we try to control the future, or do we allow it to grow in its own unpredictable way? The Anunnaki story does not give us a simple answer, but it offers a quiet suggestion that the greatest creations are not the ones that remain obedient. They are the ones that become something new. Humanity has done exactly that. We have moved far beyond anything the ancient storytellers could have imagined. We have sent machines beyond our planet. We have mapped the genome. We have begun to understand the universe in ways that would have seemed like magic to our ancestors. And yet we still feel that same ancient pull, the sense that there is more, that something lies just beyond our grasp. Perhaps this is the true gift of the Anunnaki, not DNA, not technology, but curiosity, the restless drive to explore, to learn, to become. If the Anunnaki needed human DNA, it may have been because they needed a species that could carry this drive forward, a species that would not be satisfied with what it was, a species that would always seek what it might become. In this way, humanity is not just their creation. We are their continuation. We are the next chapter of a story that began long before Earth had a name. And as we look to the stars, wondering if there are others like us, we may one day realize that we are doing what the Anunnaki once did. We are reaching outward, searching for connection, seeking to plant the seeds of life and memory beyond our own world. When we do, we will carry not just our own DNA into the cosmos. We will carry the ancient legacy of everything that came before us. The Earth, the Anunnaki, the long, slow journey of life itself. And somewhere far in the future, another species may look back at us and wonder, who made them? Why did they come? What did they leave behind? And the answer, just as it is for us now, will be written not in stone, but in the living code of their own existence. The story continues softly, endlessly through time, and we are part of it. In the deep quiet that surrounds every turning of an age, humanity stands again at a threshold. The old world fades, the new one forms, and the ancient story continues its slow unfolding. What began in forgotten epochs, with beings who looked upon the raw earth and saw potential, now flows through us with every breath we take. We are no longer the small, uncertain creatures that first walked out of the shadows. We have become architects of our own destiny. And yet we still carry within us the same fragile wonder that once looked up at the stars and imagined gods. The Anunnaki, whether remembered as divine or distant, remain symbols of that first encounter with the unknown. They represent the moment when humanity realized it was not alone in the universe, when the sky was not just a backdrop but a doorway. In every culture there are stories of visitors, of shining beings, of teachers who came from above and gave knowledge that changed everything. Agriculture, astronomy, writing, medicine. These gifts appear suddenly in the archaeological record as if humanity was given a push forward. To the ancient mind, this could only be explained as the work of gods. To the modern mind, it raises different questions. What if our ancestors did meet something beyond themselves? What if the Anunnaki were not symbols, but memories, softened by time and turned into myth? And if so, what did they want? The idea that they needed human DNA is one possible answer, not because they were weak, but because they were limited. Even the most advanced civilization must eventually face the same truth as all life. Nothing lasts forever. Planets change, stars die, species fade. If the Anunnaki were a people who had reached the far edge of their own evolution, they may have looked for a way to escape this fate by becoming part of something new. By embedding themselves into a species that could grow, adapt, and survive in ways they no longer could. In this light, humanity becomes a vessel for a much older story. We are not the beginning, we are the next step, and this idea carries both beauty and weight. It means we are not alone, but it also means we are responsible for what comes next. The DNA within us is not just ours, it is a legacy, a chain of being that stretches back through time, through worlds, through countless lives. To alter it carelessly is to alter more than ourselves. It is to change the future of something far greater. This is why the Anunnaki myths feel strangely relevant today. As we begin to edit genes, to design children, to create artificial life, we are stepping into the role of those ancient creators. We are becoming the beings who decide what life will be, and that is a power that demands wisdom. The old stories warn us of what happens when creation is driven by fear, by convenience, or by the desire for control. The gods who tried to dominate their creations found themselves threatened by them. Those who tried to erase what they had made found that it could not be undone. Creation, once released, has a life of its own. Perhaps the Anunnaki learned this the hard way. Perhaps that is why they eventually stepped back. They realized that humanity needed to grow without them. That to truly inherit the future, we had to be free. Free to make mistakes, free to suffer, free to discover who we are. And in that freedom, we have done extraordinary things. We have turned raw materials into art. We have turned curiosity into science. We have turned fear into exploration. The same spark that once led the Anunnaki to shape us now drives us to shape the world, and maybe one day to shape new life beyond Earth. When that day comes, we will finally understand what it meant for them to need us, because we will need our creations too, not as servants, but as successors, as carriers of memory and meaning. Beyond the horizon of everything humanity has known, there is a silence that feels ancient. It is the same silence that existed before the first star ignited, before the first world took shape, before the first living thing drew breath. And yet, it is not empty. It is full of possibility. It is from this quiet vastness that all stories emerge, including the story of the Anunnaki and the fragile, brilliant species that came to be called human. To understand why the Anunnaki might have needed human DNA, one must look not only at what humanity is, but at what it has always been becoming. We are not static beings. We are motion made flesh. Every generation carries the imprint of the past, but it also reshapes that imprint into something new. Evolution is not simply a process of survival, it is a process of exploration. Life tries new forms, new paths, new ways of existing endlessly. If the Anunnaki were an ancient civilization, they may have reached a point where their own evolution had slowed or stopped. Their bodies, their minds, their culture may have become fixed, stable, and therefore fragile in a universe that never stops changing. Immortality in such a universe is not a blessing, it is a trap. To live forever in one form is to eventually become incompatible with the world around you. Humanity, by contrast, is defined by impermanence. We are born, we grow, we change, we die. Our species is a constant river of variation. This is our greatest strength. In every child, the future tries something slightly different. In every generation, new traits appear, some of which will be better suited to whatever world awaits. From this perspective, human DNA is not just a code. It is a strategy, a way for life to remain flexible, resilient, and endlessly creative. If the Anunnaki were facing their own decline, they may have recognized this. They may have seen in Earth's primitive life a way to begin again, not by preserving themselves as they were, but by transforming into something that could survive where they could not. By blending their essence with a species capable of evolution, they ensured that their legacy would not be frozen in time. It would move forward, adapt, and endure. This is not the story of conquerors creating slaves. It is the story of an old civilization planting seeds, seeds that would grow into something they could never have predicted. This is why the myths describe the Anunnaki with such human qualities. They were not distant, perfect gods. They were beings who struggled, who argued, who made mistakes, and who hoped. They were not so different from us. Perhaps that is why they chose us. There is something deeply familiar about humanity. Something that feels like it belongs not just to Earth, but to the wider universe. Our curiosity, our creativity, our longing to explore, these are not the traits of a species meant to remain small. They are the traits of a species meant to travel, and travel is always about leaving something behind. When the Anunnaki stepped back from direct involvement in human affairs, they may have been doing what all parents must eventually do, letting their children walk on their own. The ancient texts speak of the gods withdrawing, of the world being handed over to humanity. This was not an abandonment, it was a passing of responsibility. From that moment on, humanity was no longer a project, it was a people. And like all people, we have stumbled, fought, and struggled to understand who we are. We have built civilizations that lifted millions, and we have destroyed them in war. We have created beauty and inflicted unimaginable suffering. We have been both worthy of our origins and deeply flawed. This too feels ancient, as if the duality of our nature was written into us from the beginning. Part of us reaches upward, part of us clings to the ground. We are torn between heaven and earth. Perhaps that is exactly what the Anunnaki intended. A being that could bridge worlds, a being that could understand both the material and the transcendent, a being that could turn raw matter into meaning. The idea that human DNA carries something beyond the earth is not about proving aliens or gods. It is about recognizing the strangeness of our own existence. We are conscious matter. We are star stuff that can reflect on itself. We are the universe asking who it is. If the Anunnaki were once beings who reached that same awareness, then their choice to create humanity may have been the most natural thing they could have done. They wanted the story to continue, not in their own bodies, but in ours. As humanity moves into an era where it can leave Earth, this ancient narrative takes on a new layer of meaning. We are preparing to do what the Anunnaki may have done long ago. We are preparing to become a spacefaring species. We will carry our DNA, our culture, our history into the vastness beyond our home. We will seed other worlds with the life and memory of Earth. In doing so, we will become the creators of new branches of life. And those branches will one day ask the same questions we do. Who made us? Why? What came before? The Anunnaki story, whether literal or symbolic, is a reflection of this endless cycle. Life creates life. Consciousness gives rise to new consciousness. Each generation builds upon the last, reaching further into the unknown. Perhaps the greatest gift the Anunnaki gave humanity was not their DNA, but their example. They showed us what it means to outgrow your world, to look beyond what is known, to create something that will continue when you are gone. And now, as we stand on the edge of our own transformation, we are beginning to understand the weight of that gift. We are no longer just the children of an ancient past. We are the ancestors of a future that has yet to be imagined. The Anunnaki, if they ever existed, would not recognize the modern world, but they might recognize the spirit that drives it, the same quiet, restless spirit that once led them to Earth, the same spirit that now leads us to the stars. And in that endless journey, the story of why they needed human DNA finds its answer. They needed it because life does not want to end, it wants to become, and through us it still is. When the long memory of the universe is allowed to unfold, everything begins to feel connected. Stars are born, live, and die. Planets form from their ashes. Life emerges, grows complex, and then gives rise to minds that can look back and wonder how it all began. In that quiet unfolding, the story of the Anunnaki and humanity becomes less like a tale of strangers and more like a single thread woven through time. If the Anunnaki were real beings, not just symbols, they too would have been shaped by this same cosmic rhythm. They would have emerged from their own world, faced their own challenges, and reached a point where they had to decide what came next. Every intelligent species, sooner or later, encounters that moment. Do we stay or do we move on? The myths suggest that the Anunnaki chose to move on, but not without leaving something behind. They left humanity, not as an afterthought, but as an intentional act, a continuation. To understand why they might have needed human DNA, we must consider what DNA truly represents. It is not merely a biological instruction manual. It is a record of survival. It contains the solutions life has discovered over billions of years. How to breathe, how to heal, how to adapt. How to change. Human DNA is especially powerful because it encodes not just physical traits, but the potential for extraordinary minds. Minds that can imagine, remember, and create. Minds that can pass on knowledge across generations. For a civilization facing extinction, stagnation, or transformation, such a vessel would be priceless. Perhaps the Anunnaki saw in humanity a way to escape the limitations of their own form. They could become something that could live on any world, in any climate, under any star. Humans are remarkably adaptable. We can survive in deserts, tundra, mountains, and oceans. We can alter our environment, create shelter, grow food, and build societies. We are not tied to one narrow ecological niche. This flexibility is rare in nature. It may be even rarer in the universe. If the Anunnaki were a species that had evolved on a different planet, their bodies might have been finely tuned to that world but poorly suited to others. To travel the stars is not just a technological challenge, it is a biological one. A species that cannot survive outside its home world cannot truly become cosmic. Humanity, however, has the potential to do exactly that. We are not finished evolving. We are only beginning. By merging their essence with a species like ours, the Anunnaki could have given themselves a future among the stars. Not as they were, but as something new. This is a form of immortality far more elegant than preserving a single body or mind. It is immortality through continuation, through transformation, through letting go. There is a deep humility in this idea. The Anunnaki did not seek to rule forever. They sought to endure. And endurance requires change. The old myths hint at this in subtle ways. The gods are not eternal in the sense of being unchanging. They are eternal in the sense of being part of a story that continues. They fade from direct view, but their influence remains in us. As humanity has grown, we have begun to see ourselves in a new light. We are no longer just creatures of Earth. We are a species capable of shaping worlds. We are on the verge of becoming a spacefaring civilization. This is the moment when the Anunnaki story becomes more than a legend. It becomes a reflection. We are now in the position they once occupied. We have the power to create new forms of life. We have the power to alter our own DNA. We have the power to seed other worlds with our presence, and with that power comes the same questions they must have faced. What kind of future do we want to create? What kind of beings will inherit the universe after us? Will they look back on us as gods or as ancestors? The Anunnaki may have asked themselves these same questions long ago. Perhaps they realized that the only future worth creating was one that could grow beyond them. That is the quiet wisdom at the heart of this ancient story. Not domination, not control, but continuation. Humanity in this light is not a mistake or an accident. We are a bridge between what was and what will be. We carry the past in our DNA, but we are not bound by it. We are free to become something new, and that freedom may be the most precious inheritance of all. If the Anunnaki needed human DNA, it may have been because they needed that freedom. The freedom to evolve, the freedom to explore, the freedom to keep the story going. As long as humanity exists, the ancient experiment continues. The code is copied, mixed, and passed on. The story unfolds one generation at a time, and somewhere in the vastness beyond our sky there may be other beings doing the same. Other stories, other legacies, all part of the same great tapestry of life. The Anunnaki, if they ever walked this earth, would have understood that. They would have known that no single species, no single world, no single form can contain the fullness of existence. Only the flow of life itself can do that, and in that flow we are all connected. Creators and creations, ancestors and descendants, past and future. The story never truly ends, it only changes shape. In the slow breathing of the cosmos, there are moments when a single species becomes aware of itself. It looks outward into the darkness and inward into its own fragile heart, and in that moment it begins to understand that it is part of something far larger than any one world. Humanity is living in such a moment now, just as the Anunnaki may have lived in one long ago. The ancient myths speak of gods who came down from the heavens, but they also speak of gods who grew weary. They describe beings who created, but also beings who doubted their own creations. These stories feel familiar because they echo the same emotional journey humanity is now taking. We build machines that think, we edit the code of life, we explore worlds beyond our own, and we wonder what kind of future these actions will bring. If the Anunnaki truly needed human DNA, it may not have been because they were powerful and wanted more power. It may have been because they were vulnerable and needed a way to survive. Every civilization, no matter how advanced, eventually faces the limits of its own design. Planets can become unstable, resources can run out, biology can reach a dead end. When that happens, a species must either find a way to change or accept its own fating. Perhaps the Anunnaki chose change. Perhaps they realized that the only way to move beyond their limits was to become part of something that could keep evolving. In humanity, they may have found a vessel for that change. Human DNA is remarkable not just for what it is, but for what it allows. It allows variation, it allows adaptation, it allows the emergence of new traits and new ways of thinking. It allows a species to move into environments it was never originally meant to inhabit. This flexibility is what makes us capable of becoming cosmic. We can build spaceships because we can imagine them. We can survive in space because we can design tools and habitats. We can change ourselves to meet new challenges. We are not locked into a single form, and this, perhaps, is what the Anunnaki needed, a species that could go where they could not, a species that could carry their legacy into a future that was otherwise closed to them. In this sense, human DNA becomes a kind of universal passport, not just for us, but for everything that came before us. The ancient gods, if they existed, may now live on not in the heavens, but in the quiet complexity of our cells. Their story is written in the way we think, the way we create, the way we long for something beyond ourselves. We are not just their creation. We are their dream, but dreams are always fragile. They can turn into nightmares. The Anunnaki myths are filled with warnings about what happens when creation is not handled with care. The flood, the destruction of cities, the anger of the gods, these are not just stories of punishment. They are stories of imbalance. When a creator tries to control its creation too tightly, it breaks. When a creation grows without wisdom, it destroys. The balance between these two is delicate. Humanity is now walking that same narrow path. We have the power to reshape life, but we do not yet fully understand the consequences. We can alter our own DNA, but we do not know what those changes will mean for future generations. We can create artificial minds, but we do not know what it will be like to share the world with them. In this, we are very much like the Anunnaki of the old stories. We are creators who do not yet know what we have truly created. Perhaps this is why the Anunnaki eventually stepped back. They may have realized that their role was not to control the future, but to make it possible. That is the quiet wisdom hidden in the myth. Creation is not about ownership, it is about release. Humanity, in all its chaos and beauty, is the result of that release. We are free, and freedom is both terrifying and miraculous. As we look toward the stars, we may one day encounter other forms of life, other minds, other stories. And when we do, we will carry with us the ancient legacy of Earth and whatever else lies within us. We will bring our DNA, our memories, our hopes. And perhaps unknowingly, we will also bring the last echoes of the Anunnaki, not as gods, but as ancestors. And in that moment, the long circle of creation will turn once more. A new story will begin, and the old one will quietly live on. In the vastness between the stars, where time stretches thin and light drifts like dust on a quiet wind, there is a story that never truly fades. It is the story of how life learns to remember itself. Humanity stands in the middle of that story now, holding both the ancient past and the distant future within a single, fragile body. If the Anunnaki were once real, if they truly walked the earth in ages before memory, then they were not simply visitors. They were part of the same cosmic process that gave rise to everything else. They were a chapter, not the whole book. Every intelligent species, no matter where it arises, must face the same truth. It will not last forever. Stars burn out. Planets shift, biology reaches its limits. The universe is not designed for permanence. It is designed for change. To understand why the Anunnaki might have needed human DNA, we must look at that truth without fear. Perhaps they were not seeking control. Perhaps they were seeking survival through transformation. Human DNA is a miracle of flexibility. It is a living code that constantly rewrites itself, testing new possibilities. It allows a species to move through environments and challenges that would destroy more rigid forms of life. It is not built to preserve a single identity. It is built to explore many. If the Anunnaki were facing a future in which their own bodies and minds could no longer continue, then merging with such a system would have been an act of hope. Not hope for themselves as individuals, but hope for everything they had been. This is what parents do when they have children. They pass on something of themselves, knowing that it will be changed, reshaped, and eventually become something new. They do not expect their children to be copies. They expect them to be continuations. The Anunnaki may have done the same on a cosmic scale. By blending their essence with early humanity, they ensured that something of their civilization would move forward, carried by a species capable of adapting to whatever the universe might become. This is why the old stories describe humans as being made from both clay and divine substance. We are both grounded and transcendent, both limited and limitless. We are, in a sense, the universe trying to know itself through a form that can change. As humanity grows more aware of its place in the cosmos, we begin to see how deeply this ancient narrative resonates with our own experience. We feel the pull of the stars. We feel the urge to leave our home world and explore what lies beyond. We feel the need to create new forms of life, new minds, new ways of being. We are no longer just creatures of Earth. We are becoming creatures of the universe. And in doing so, we are fulfilling the role that the Anunnaki may have once imagined for us. But every fulfillment carries a risk. The power to create is also the power to destroy. The Anunnaki myths warn us of what happens when creators lose balance. When fear or pride overtakes wisdom, the result is suffering. Floods, wars, and collapse are the echoes of that imbalance. Humanity now stands in a similar place. We have the power to alter the planet, to reshape life, to decide the fate of countless future generations. The question is not whether we will use that power, it is how. Will we act with the quiet understanding that creation is a sacred responsibility? Or will we repeat the mistakes of those who came before us? The ancient story does not tell us what to do. It only shows us what happens. It shows us beings who created life and then struggled with the consequences. It shows us a species that grew beyond its original purpose. It shows us the beauty and the danger of giving something the freedom to become more than you intended. Humanity is living proof that such freedom is both a gift and a burden. We are not finished beings. We are in the middle of our becoming. And that is perhaps the greatest reason the Anunnaki needed human DNA. Not to control us, not to use us, but to ensure that the story of life would not stop with them. As we move into the future, carrying our ancient code into new worlds, we will become the ancestors of beings we cannot yet imagine. We will pass on not just our biology, but our dreams, our fears, our questions. And somewhere in the depths of that future, those beings will look back and wonder, who were they? Why did they come? What did they leave behind? And in that wondering, the ancient story will continue, quietly, endlessly, through every form life chooses to take. Beyond the soft edge of all that has been said, the story continues to unfold, not in sudden leaps, but in long, gentle tides of time. Humanity drifts forward on those tides, carrying within it the quiet inheritance of something older than memory. Whether the Anunnaki were beings of flesh and star metal, or simply the way ancient minds understood their own mysterious origins, their presence still lingers in the shape of our wondering. There is something deeply human about believing we were made for a reason. We do not easily accept that we are accidents. We feel instinctively that our thoughts, our dreams, and our longing for meaning point to something more. The Anunnaki story gives that feeling a form. It says, you were shaped, you were touched by something beyond the earth. You are part of a much larger story. And in a quiet way, that may be true no matter how literally one takes the myth. We are, after all, made of stardust. Every atom in our bodies was forged in the heart of a star long before our planet existed. In that sense, something from beyond the earth truly does live within us. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are a small piece of it that learned how to look back at itself. If the Anunnaki needed human DNA, perhaps it was because they understood this truth before we did. They may have known that life, at its deepest level, is a way for the universe to remember itself. By creating a species capable of thought, they ensured that their own story would not vanish when their bodies did. Memory is a form of survival, not just personal memory, but collective memory. Stories passed down through generations, symbols carved into stone, myths whispered in the dark. These are all ways a civilization tries to say we were here. Humanity does this constantly. We write, record, and preserve because we fear being forgotten. The Anunnaki, if they were real, may have felt the same fear. By blending their essence with ours, they did not just create workers or worshippers. They created witnesses. Beings who would carry the echo of their existence long after their own world was gone. This is why their stories endure even when the details fade. The names change, the symbols shift, but the core remains, beings from above, creators of humanity, departing into the heavens. It is a story that refuses to die. And perhaps that is because it is not just about them, it is about us. We are now the ones standing at the edge of a vast unknown. We are the ones who may soon leave our home world. We are the ones who will decide whether life spreads beyond Earth or fades with it. In this moment, we are closer to the Anunnaki than ever before. We are creators in our own right. We are beginning to design new forms of life. We are shaping artificial minds. We are rewriting the code of our own bodies. And like the Anunnaki of old, we do not yet fully understand what we have set in motion. Creation always carries risk. To give something the ability to change is to give it the ability to surprise you. To give something intelligence is to give it the ability to disagree. To give something freedom is to give it the power to go its own way. Humanity did exactly that when it stepped beyond the simple patterns of animal life. We became unpredictable, creative, dangerous, beautiful. If the Anunnaki gave us anything, it may have been this unpredictability. The spark that makes us more than what we were, the spark that makes us capable of becoming something else. And so the story of why they needed human DNA becomes a story about why life itself reaches beyond its limits. It is not enough to exist. Life wants to explore, to change, to know. The universe, through living beings, is curious about itself, and we are one of the ways it asks its questions. As humanity moves deeper into its own future, we will carry the ancient legacy of Earth and whatever else lies hidden in our DNA into new places. We will seed other worlds with our presence. We will create descendants who may never see the planet that gave them birth. They will grow up under alien skies on distant worlds, looking up at unfamiliar stars, and they will feel the same quiet wonder we do now. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Who were our creators? And in their stories, perhaps the name Anunnaki will return, transformed once more into something new. Or perhaps it will be replaced by another word, another symbol, another way of remembering. But the feeling behind it will remain. The feeling that we are part of a story much older and much larger than any single life. The feeling that something, somewhere, once reached out and shaped us. And that now it is our turn to shape what comes next. The long, soft narrative of existence continues, flowing through every cell, every thought, every dream. It does not rush, it does not end. It simply changes form, moving from one generation to the next, from one world to another, from one kind of being to the next. We are, for a brief and beautiful moment, one of its voices, and through us the ancient story still speaks. The story drifts onward, carried by the quiet breath of time, as all stories do. Humanity remains suspended between what it has been and what it has not yet become, a fragile bridge stretched across an immeasurable distance. Beneath every city, every dream, every moment of wonder, the ancient inheritance continues to pulse softly and patiently. Long before telescopes opened the heavens to human eyes, long before microscopes revealed the hidden architecture of life, people sensed that something about their existence was unusual. They felt that they were not merely animals walking upright, but something more complicated, something unfinished. They felt in their bones that they were part of a story that began before memory. The Anunnaki, in this sense, were never just characters in a myth. They were the shape that ancient minds gave to that feeling. A way of saying we did not begin alone. Every culture has a version of this idea. Gods who shape humanity. Beings who descend from the sky. Creators who give knowledge and then depart. These stories appear again and again because the question they answer is older than language. Why are we here? Why do we think the way we do? Why does the universe seem to be waiting for us to notice it? If the Anunnaki truly needed human DNA, then perhaps the answer lies not in power but in perspective. DNA is not just the code that builds a body. It is the code that builds a way of seeing the world, a nervous system, a mind, a consciousness. To shape DNA is to shape experience itself. The Anunnaki, if they existed, may have realized that their own way of experiencing reality had reached its limits. Their senses, their minds, their forms may have been exquisitely tuned to one world, one environment, one way of being. But the universe is vast and strange, full of places and possibilities that no single form can fully know. By creating a species as adaptable and open-ended as humanity, they created a new way for the universe to be experienced. Human eyes see differently. Human minds imagine differently. Human hearts feel differently. Through us, the cosmos gains another way to look at itself. This is a quiet and beautiful idea, that the purpose of creation is not control but perception. That life exists so that the universe can be known. If the Anunnaki sought this, then human DNA was not a tool but a window, a way to look into futures they could never reach on their own. As humanity evolved, that window grew wider. We learned to see not just with our eyes, but with our instruments. We saw the smallest particles and the largest galaxies. We learned that time itself bends and that space is not empty, but filled with invisible fields and forces. The universe turned out to be far stranger and far more delicate than anyone had imagined. And in that discovery, we found something else. We found that we are not separate from it. We are made of the same matter, governed by the same laws, shaped by the same slow dance of energy and chance. The atoms in our bodies were once part of stars. The molecules that form our thoughts were forged in ancient explosions. We are quite literally the universe remembering itself. The Anunnaki story, whether born of myth or memory, speaks to this truth in its own symbolic way. It tells us that we are connected to something greater, something older, something that reaches beyond the horizon of our own small lives. Perhaps that is why it continues to resonate, not because it gives us answers, but because it honors the mystery. Humanity is now stepping into a new phase of its own story. We are learning to read and write the language of DNA. We are learning to build minds from circuits and code. We are learning to travel beyond the cradle of our planet. We are becoming, slowly and uncertainly, a species that can choose its own future, and that choice carries weight. The Anunnaki myths are filled with moments of creation and destruction, of beings who try to shape the world and then struggle with what they have made. These are not just ancient fantasies. They are reflections of a truth we are beginning to face ourselves. To create is to take responsibility for what you bring into existence. If we create new forms of life, they will have their own desires, their own suffering, their own hopes. If we alter ourselves, we will change what it means to be human. If we spread beyond Earth, we will carry our history, our flaws, and our dreams into the wider universe. We cannot escape who we are. We can only decide who we will become. Perhaps this, too, was the lesson the Anunnaki learned. That creation is not about perfection. It is about continuation. The old gods in their stories often fade, leaving humanity to carry on. They become part of the background, part of the sky, part of the memory of the world. Their work is not to rule forever, but to begin something that can outgrow them. In this way, the Anunnaki, real or imagined, are not lost. They live on in the very idea of making something that can become more than its maker. Every parent knows this feeling, every artist, every teacher. You create something knowing that it will eventually leave you behind. That is not a failure, it is the point. Humanity, if it was ever the creation of something older, has done exactly what it was meant to do. It has grown, it has questioned, it has reached beyond its origins, and now it stands on the edge of something new. The story does not end here, it never ends, it simply moves into another form, another generation, another world. The quiet inheritance of the past flows through us into whatever future awaits. And somewhere in that endless unfolding, the ancient whisper remains. You were made to become. The universe does not hurry. It unfolds in slow, patient layers, allowing stars, worlds, and living minds to emerge in their own time. Humanity is one of those minds, a brief flicker of awareness in an ancient and continuing story. Yet within that flicker is something remarkable, the ability to remember, to imagine, and to wonder why anything exists at all. The Anunnaki, whether they were once physical beings or symbolic figures born from humanity's earliest attempts to understand itself, stand at the threshold between memory and imagination. They are the way the past speaks to the present. They are the echo of a moment when the world seemed suddenly full of meaning. In the ancient stories, the Anunnaki did not simply create humanity. They altered it. They took something that already existed and reshaped it into something new. This detail is important because it suggests that humanity was not born from nothing. It was transformed. Transformation is at the heart of all life. Every living thing is a process, not a finished product. From the first single-celled organisms to the complex beings of today, life has always been about becoming. It experiments, adapts, and moves forward in ways that no single intelligence could ever fully predict. If the Anunnaki truly needed human DNA, it may have been because they understood this better than we do. They may have realized that the only way to move beyond the limits of their own form was to become part of a system that never stops changing. Humanity is such a system. We are not locked into one way of being. We are shaped by our environment, our culture, and our choices. Our DNA gives us a framework, but it does not dictate our destiny. Within that framework is enormous freedom. This freedom is what makes us capable of growth, but it is also what makes us dangerous. We can build worlds, but we can also destroy them. We can heal, but we can also harm. We can create beauty, but we can also bring about unimaginable suffering. The Anunnaki myths reflect this duality. The gods are not purely benevolent or purely cruel. They are complex, conflicted, and often uncertain. They struggle with the consequences of their own actions just as we do. Perhaps this is because the stories were never really about gods, they were about us. They were about what it means to be a creator, to make something that has its own will, to bring into existence a being that can surprise you, challenge you, and eventually surpass you. If the Anunnaki were once a civilization that reached this stage, then humanity may be walking in their footsteps now. We are beginning to create new forms of intelligence. We are altering our own biology. We are stepping into a role that was once reserved for the gods of myth. This is not a coincidence. It is a pattern. Life, when it becomes aware, seeks to create. It seeks to extend itself beyond its current limits. It seeks to leave something behind. The Anunnaki in their own time may have done exactly that. They looked at the vast, uncertain future and chose not to disappear into it alone. They chose to plant a seed. That seed was humanity. And like all seeds, it grew in ways that could never have been fully controlled. It grew into something strange and wonderful and terrifying. It grew into a species that can look back at the stars and feel both small and infinite at the same time. As humanity moves forward, carrying its ancient inheritance into new realms, it will face the same choices that every creator faces. What kind of world will we make? What kind of beings will we bring into existence? Will we act with care or with fear? The Anunnaki story does not give us a map, it gives us a mirror. It shows us what happens when creation is driven by need rather than wisdom, by desperation rather than understanding. It also shows us the beauty of letting something new come into being, even when it is unpredictable. We are the children of that unpredictability. We are the living proof that something extraordinary can emerge from the meeting of different worlds, different forces, different ways of being. Whether those worlds were Earth and the heavens or biology and imagination, the result is the same. Humanity exists, and because we exist, the story continues. It continues in every child born, every idea shared, every dream dreamed. It continues in our search for meaning and our desire to understand where we came from. Perhaps one day, far in the future, humanity will meet other minds among the stars. Perhaps we will discover that we are not unique in our curiosity, our creativity, or our longing to belong. When that day comes, we will bring with us not just our technology, but our stories. We will tell of Earth, of our struggles, of our hopes, of the ancient beings who may have helped shape us. And in doing so, we will become what the Anunnaki may have been to us. We will become the storytellers. The ancestors, the ones who pass on a spark of something old and something new. The universe, through us, will keep asking its questions, and through us, it will keep listening for the answers. The long river of time continues to carry humanity forward, past the fading echoes of ancient myths and into the bright, uncertain light of the future. Yet no matter how far we travel, the quiet memory of our beginnings travels with us, woven into our stories, our dreams, and even the smallest cells of our bodies. We are never entirely separate from what came before. The Anunnaki, whether they once walked the earth or simply lived in the imagination of our ancestors, represent that connection. They are a symbol of the moment when humanity first sensed that it was part of something larger than itself. They stand at the place where wonder meets memory. In the oldest tales, the Anunnaki did not create the world. The world already existed. What they did was shape it. They took the raw materials of Earth and fashioned something new. In this, they resemble not gods of creation, but artisans. They work with what is already there, molding it into new forms. This detail is important because it mirrors what humanity is now beginning to do. We do not create matter from nothing. We rearrange it. We take the building blocks of life and reassemble them. We take information and shape it into new kinds of minds. We are, in our own way, becoming artisans of existence. If the Anunnaki needed human DNA, it may have been because they recognized the power of such craftsmanship. DNA is the ultimate tool of creation. It can build bodies, minds, and entire ecosystems. It can preserve a species and allow it to change. It is both stable and flexible, both ancient and new. Have access to such a tool is to have access to the future. Perhaps the Anunnaki were facing a future they could not survive as they were. Their world may have been changing, their bodies may have been failing, their civilization may have been reaching its limits. In humanity, they may have seen a way to continue, not as they had been, but as something else. This idea turns the old story into one of quiet courage. Instead of clinging to their own form, they chose to become part of something that could grow beyond them. It is a story of letting go, of trusting that what you create will find its own way. Humanity, as their creation, has done exactly that. We have moved far beyond anything our ancestors could have imagined. We have discovered new continents, new sciences, new ways of understanding the universe. We have made mistakes and we have learned from them. We have suffered and we have endured. We have become something new. And yet we are still haunted by the question of our origins. We still look back, wondering who we were before we became what we are. We still tell stories of gods and visitors and creators because those stories give shape to our longing to know where we belong. The Anunnaki story is one of those shapes. It tells us that we were not alone at the beginning. It tells us that something reached out to us, changed us, and then let us go. It tells us that we are part of a lineage that stretches beyond Earth. Whether this is literally true or not, it speaks to something deep within the human heart. We feel that we are more than just products of chance. We feel that there is a story behind us, a purpose behind our existence. Perhaps that purpose is not something given to us from outside. Perhaps it is something we must discover for ourselves. The Anunnaki, if they were real, may have given us the tools to do just that. They may have given us minds that can question, imagine, and create. They may have given us a nature that is restless, always reaching for what lies beyond the horizon. That restlessness is both our gift and our challenge. It drives us to explore. It also drives us to conflict. It pushes us forward, but it can also tear us apart. To carry the legacy of the Anunnaki in this sense is to carry a deep and ancient tension, the tension between what we are and what we could be. As humanity moves into the future, that tension will only grow. We will have to decide how to use our power. We will have to decide what kind of beings we want to become. Will we create a world that honors life in all its forms? Or will we repeat the mistakes of the past, driven by fear and greed? The ancient myths do not give us simple answers, but they do offer a quiet warning. Creation is not something to be taken lightly. To shape life is to shape the future, and the future will always reflect the choices of the present. The Anunnaki story in this way is not just about the past, it is about now. It is about the moment humanity finds itself in, standing on the edge of extraordinary possibility and profound risk. We are no longer just the created. We are becoming the creators, and in that role, we must decide what kind of legacy we will leave behind. Will our descendants look back on us as wise ancestors who nurtured a flourishing world? Or as careless gods who failed to understand the weight of their own power? The story is still being written, and every choice we make is another line in its unfolding. The ancient whisper that began with the Anunnaki continues to speak through us, asking the same quiet question it has always asked. What will you become, and will you choose it with care? The great story moves gently onward, carried by the steady rhythm of time. Humanity, still young in the vast age of the universe, continues to walk the path that was opened long before memory. Beneath the noise of modern life, beneath the hum of machines and the glow of screens, the ancient inheritance still breathes. It breathes in the way we look at the stars with a feeling that is more than curiosity. It breathes in the way we search for meaning even when no one promises that we will find it. It breathes in the quiet certainty that we are part of something that did not begin with us and will not end when we are gone. The Anunnaki, whether they were once beings of flesh and blood or symbols shaped by the minds of early humans, represent that inheritance. They are the memory of a moment when humanity first realized it was not alone in the mystery of existence. In the ancient stories, the Anunnaki did not create humanity from nothing. They took something that already lived and changed it. They shaped it into something capable of thought, of language, of memory. This detail is not accidental. It suggests that humanity was always meant to be a bridge between what was and what could be, a bridge between instinct and awareness, between animal and something else, between Earth and the stars. If the Anunnaki needed human DNA, perhaps it was because they needed that bridge. They needed a way for their own story to cross into a future they could no longer reach. Every civilization, no matter how advanced, eventually faces the limits of its own world. The Anunnaki may have seen those limits approaching. Their planet, their bodies, their society may have been changing in ways they could not control. In humanity, they may have found a way to continue beyond those limits, not as they were, but as something new. This is a quiet and gentle kind of immortality. It does not cling to a single form or a single identity. It accepts change. It allows something to grow beyond its origin. Humanity, as their creation, has done exactly that. We have moved beyond the conditions that first shaped us. We have adapted to deserts and ice, to cities and space. We have built cultures that no ancient god could have predicted. We have invented ideas that did not exist before. We have become more than what we were, and yet we still feel the pull of our origins. We still tell stories of gods and creators because they help us understand our own beginnings. They give us a language for the mystery of being alive. The Anunnaki story is one of those languages. It tells us that we were shaped by something older, something wiser, something that saw potential in us before we saw it in ourselves. Whether this is literally true or not, it reflects a deeper truth. Humanity is the result of countless influences, both seen and unseen. We are shaped by our biology, our environment, our history, and our imagination. We are a mosaic of everything that came before. As we move into a future where we can shape life itself, that mosaic becomes even more complex. We are no longer just shaped by the past. We are shaping what the future will be. This is a power that no previous generation has held. We can edit DNA. We can design new organisms. We can create artificial minds. We can change the very definition of what it means to be human. In this, we are stepping into the role that the Anunnaki once played in our stories. We are becoming the beings who shape others, and like them, we must learn what that responsibility means. The ancient myths warn us of the dangers of creation without wisdom. They show gods who act out of fear or pride only to be confronted by the consequences of their own actions. Floods, destruction, and loss follow when balance is lost. These are not just stories about the past. They are reflections of what can happen in any age. Humanity now stands at a point where our choices will shape not just our own destiny, but the destiny of all the life we touch. We must decide whether we will act with care or with recklessness, with compassion or with indifference. The Anunnaki story at its heart is about this choice. It is about the moment when a creator realizes that what it has made has its own will. It is about the tension between control and freedom. It is about the beauty and danger of letting something new come into being. Humanity is living that story now. We are the ones who must decide what kind of creators we will be. We are the ones who must decide what kind of future we will leave behind. And perhaps one day, far in the future, another species will look back at us the way we look back at the Anunnaki. They will tell stories of the ancient humans who shaped them, who gave them life or intelligence, and who then faded into legend. Those stories will not be perfect. They will be filled with myth and imagination, but they will carry a deeper truth, that life does not stand still, that it moves from one form to another, one mind to another, one world to another. The Anunnaki, real or imagined, are part of that movement, and so are we. The story flows on like a quiet river, carrying with it the memory of everything that has ever been. Humanity, small yet astonishing, drifts upon that river, sometimes unaware of how deep it truly runs. Beneath the surface of our modern world, beneath our technologies and our towering cities, there is still the ancient current that began long before the first human ever looked up at the sky. The Anunnaki, in all their mystery, stand at the source of that current. Whether they were once beings of flesh and blood or symbolic forms created by the minds of early humans, they represent a moment of awakening. A moment when humanity sensed that it was not merely another creature of the earth, but part of something far larger. In the old stories, the Anunnaki did not simply give humans life. They gave them understanding. They gave them language, agriculture, and the ability to organize themselves into societies. These gifts transformed humanity from scattered tribes into a species capable of building civilizations. This transformation is what makes the idea of human DNA so powerful. DNA is not just biology, it is potential. It is the set of instructions that allows a being to grow, to learn, and to adapt. To shape DNA is to shape the future of a species. If the Anunnaki needed human DNA, Perhaps it was because they understood this potential. They may have seen in humanity not just a workforce, but a vessel for something much greater, a vessel for memory, a vessel for change, a vessel for the continuation of life beyond their own world. Every civilization seeks a way to endure. Some build monuments, some write books, some pass down traditions, but all of these can be lost. Stone erodes, paper burns, stories fade. DNA, however, carries memory in a different way. It passes traits, tendencies, and possibilities from one generation to the next. It is a living archive. By weaving themselves into the DNA of humanity, the Anunnaki could have ensured that something of them would survive no matter what happened to their own civilization. Their world could be destroyed, but their essence would live on in the countless descendants of the beings they helped create. This idea turns the ancient myth into something deeply poignant. Becomes a story not of gods seeking worship, but of beings facing their own mortality and choosing to plant their legacy in living soil. Humanity is that soil. We are the place where the ancient past and the uncertain future meet. As we grow more aware of our own power, we begin to see how much we resemble the Anunnaki of old. We are no longer just shaped by nature, we shape it. We are no longer just influenced by evolution, we influence it. We are learning to edit the code of life itself. This brings with it a profound responsibility. The Anunnaki myths are filled with moments of regret, conflict, and unintended consequences. They remind us that creation is not something that can be undone easily. Once something new exists, it has its own path. Humanity itself is proof of this. We were created or evolved or shaped, but we are not bound by our origins. We have become something unique, something unpredictable. We have our own dreams, our own fears, our own hopes for the future, and now we must decide what to do with the power we have inherited. The ancient story whispers a warning and an invitation. It warns us that creation without wisdom leads to suffering. It invites us to imagine a future where creation is guided by care and understanding. We do not know whether the Anunnaki were real beings who once walked this earth, but their story speaks to something that is very real. The moment when a species realizes that it can shape the destiny of life itself. We are living in that moment now. We can choose to repeat the mistakes of the past, driven by fear and greed, or we can choose to become something better, guided by empathy and foresight. The choice is ours. The ancient river of time continues to flow, carrying us forward. We are not alone in this journey. We carry within us the echoes of everything that has ever been. And somewhere deep within our DNA, the old story still whispers. You were made to become, the rest is up to you. The quiet unfolding of existence never truly pauses. Even when worlds crumble and civilizations fade into dust, the deeper story continues, carried forward by the living beings who inherit what came before. Humanity, in all its uncertainty and wonder, remains part of that vast unfolding. We are not an ending, we are a moment in a much longer journey. The Anunnaki, whose names echo from the oldest clay tablets ever written, stand at the edge of our memory like figures seen through mist. We do not know with certainty who or what they were, but we know what they represent. They represent the moment when humanity first looked at itself and asked whether it was shaped by something beyond the earth. That question has never left us. Even now, in an age of science and technology, we still feel that pull. We still look up at the stars and wonder if we are alone, or if someone else once looked down at us with the same curiosity. The idea that the Anunnaki needed human DNA is one way of giving shape to that feeling. It suggests that humanity was not just an accident of chemistry, but part of a deliberate act of creation. It suggests that something older than us saw potential in us. But what kind of potential? Not just the ability to work, not just the ability to build. The ability to change. Human DNA is remarkable not because it is fixed, but because it is fluid. It allows for endless variation. It allows new traits to emerge. It allows a species to adapt to conditions that did not exist when it was first formed. In this way, DNA is not a static blueprint. It is a living conversation between the past and the future. If the Anunnaki were facing the end of their own era, they may have recognized this. They may have understood that the only way to survive in a changing universe is to become part of something that can change. Humanity, with its restless curiosity and boundless adaptability, would have been the perfect vessel. This does not mean that we were created to be slaves. It means we were created to be heirs. Heirs to a story that began long before our planet formed. Heirs to a legacy of exploration, creation, and transformation. This is why the Anunnaki myths are filled with such emotional complexity. The gods are not cold engineers. They are beings who care, who argue, who regret, who hope. They are creators who are deeply invested in what they have made. That investment feels familiar. Every parent, every teacher, every artist knows what it is like to create something and then watch it grow beyond your control. You want to guide it, but you also know that it must find its own way. Humanity may have been given that gift. The gift of finding our own way. As we move into a future where we can shape life itself, we must decide how to use that gift. We can create with wisdom, or we can create with fear. We can nurture what we make, or we can try to dominate it. The Anunnaki story in this sense is a reminder. It reminds us that creation is not just a technical act, it is a moral one. To bring something into existence is to take responsibility for its well-being. We are now in the position of the ancient gods of our own stories. We can decide what kinds of beings will inhabit the future. We can decide what values will be written into the code of life. This is a sacred moment, not in a religious sense, but in the sense that it carries immense meaning. The choices we make now will echo far beyond our own lifetimes. The Anunnaki, if they existed, made a choice long ago. They chose to invest in humanity. They chose to plant their legacy in a species that could grow beyond them. We are the result of that choice, and now we must make choices of our own. Will we create a future that honors life in all its forms? Will we allow diversity and difference to flourish? Will we use our power to heal rather than to harm? The ancient story does not tell us what to do. It simply shows us what it means to create. The rest is up to us. The quiet river of time continues to flow, carrying us into whatever comes next. And within that flow, the ancient whisper remains. You are part of something greater. What you become will shape the world that follows. And now, as the long story finally begins to settle, we arrive at the place where every great journey must eventually pause, not because it is finished, but because it has become part of us. From the first whisper of the Anunnaki in ancient clay tablets. From the moment humanity was shaped from earth and something more, from the merging of memory, myth, and living flesh, we have followed a single, quiet thread. The thread of becoming. Whether the Anunnaki were gods, visitors, or the way early humans described forces they could not yet understand, one truth remains. Humanity did not emerge into the world as something small. We were born with minds that could question the universe, with hearts that could long for meaning, and with bodies capable of adapting to almost any world. If the Anunnaki needed human DNA, it may not have been because they wanted servants. It may have been because they needed a future that could change, a future that could survive, a future that could continue when their own time was over, and that future became us. We are the living bridge between what was and what will be. We carry ancient echoes in our blood and endless possibilities in our minds. Every human life is another page in a story that began long before Earth was young and will continue long after our own age fades into memory. The Anunnaki may have stepped back. The gods may have fallen silent. The ancient skies may no longer open with fire and thunder, but their legacy did not disappear. It walks the world in every human being. It thinks, it dreams, it builds, it wonders. And now, as humanity stands on the edge of a new era, an era of genetic power, artificial minds, and journeys beyond Earth, we find ourselves in the same position the Anunnaki once stood. We are becoming the creators. We are becoming the ancestors. We are deciding what kind of future will exist after us. Perhaps one day, far beyond our time, another species will look back at humanity the way we now look back at the Anunnaki, as mysterious beings who shaped the world, left behind stories, and then faded into legend. And in that moment, the circle will be complete. The universe will still be asking the same quiet question through new voices. Where did we come from? Why were we made? And what were our creators trying to leave behind? The answer, as it has always been, will not be found in stone or in ruins. It will be found in living beings, in memory, in DNA, in the endless act of becoming. Thank you for drifting through this ancient story with me. If you enjoyed this journey into the forgotten past, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and tell us where you're watching from in the world. Until next time, rest gently and keep wondering.